You know that feeling when you wake up, slightly disoriented, and realize you've just spent the last however many hours dreaming about your ex again? Maybe you were back together in the dream, or maybe you were fighting, or perhaps it was something completely mundane like grocery shopping together. And the frustrating part, the really maddening part, is that you don't even want to be thinking about them. You've moved on, or at least you thought you had. You might even be happy with someone new, or perfectly content being single. So why does your subconscious keep dragging this person back into your nighttime consciousness like some kind of unwanted guest who doesn't know when the party's over? It's actually one of the most common dream complaints people have, and if you're experiencing it, you're far from alone. These recurring dreams about exes can feel like a betrayal by your own mind, as if some part of you is secretly still hung up on someone you've consciously decided to leave in the past. But here's the thing, and this might actually come as a relief, these dreams almost never mean what you think they mean. They're rarely about wanting that person back, and they're definitely not your subconscious trying to tell you that you made a mistake. To understand why your ex keeps showing up in your dreams, we need to talk about what dreams actually are and how they function. Your brain during sleep is doing something really remarkable. It's not just shutting down and resting, it's actively processing, sorting, filing, and making sense of everything you experienced while you were awake. Think of it like an incredibly sophisticated filing system that works the night shift. During the day, information and experiences pile up on your mental desk in a chaotic mess, and at night, your brain goes through all of it, deciding what's important enough to keep in long-term storage, what can be tossed out, and what connections exist between different pieces of information. Now, here's where it gets interesting with ex-partners specifically. When you were in a relationship with someone, especially a significant relationship, your brain created millions of neural pathways associated with that person. These pathways connected to everything: your daily routines, your emotional responses, your sense of identity, your future planning, your problem-solving strategies, even the way you physically moved through the world. If you lived together, there were pathways connected to every room in your home, every meal you ate, every show you watched. That person became woven into the very fabric of how your brain organized information about your life. When a relationship ends, those pathways don't just disappear overnight. They're still there, these well-worn roads in your neural network, even if you're not consciously traveling them anymore. And during sleep, when your conscious mind isn't in the driver's seat directing traffic, your brain sometimes wanders down these old familiar routes simply because they exist. It's taking the path of least resistance, in a way. These neural pathways represent significant emotional learning experiences, times when you grew or changed or felt deeply, and your brain is still processing all of that. But there's usually something else going on too, something more specific to your current life. Dreams about exes often spike during times of stress, transition, or when you're facing situations that somehow echo the dynamics of that past relationship. Let's say you're dealing with a conflict at work where you feel unheard or undervalued. If feeling unheard was a major issue in your relationship with your ex, your brain might pull up that ex in your dreams, not because you miss them, but because they've become a symbol in your internal filing system for that particular emotional experience. Your ex, in the dream, is basically a shorthand your brain uses to process the feeling of not being heard. Or maybe you're starting a new relationship, and even though it's going well, you're experiencing some anxiety about vulnerability and trust. Your brain might conjure up your ex in dreams as a way of processing these new relationship feelings through the lens of what you already know about relationships. The ex isn't the point, the emotional territory you're navigating is the point, and your brain is using familiar imagery to help you work through it. There's also the phenomenon of unfinished business, but not in the way people usually think about it. When we say unfinished business, we often imagine it means you need to have some final conversation with your ex or that there's something left unsaid between you. Sometimes that's true, but more often, the unfinished business is internal. It's about processing the experience fully, integrating what you learned, coming to terms with how the relationship changed you, and fully updating your internal sense of self to reflect who you are post-relationship. Think about it this way: that relationship was a chapter in your life story, and sometimes we haven't fully written the conclusion of that chapter in our minds. We know how it ended in the external world: we broke up, we moved out, we stopped talking, but internally, there might still be processing happening. What did this relationship teach you about yourself? What patterns did you notice? What do you want to do differently in the future? What parts of yourself did you discover or rediscover? Your dreams might be the space where this processing happens, and your ex shows up not as a romantic interest but as a character in the story you're still writing about your own growth. Anxiety and fear also play a huge role in recurring dreams about exes. If the relationship ended badly, if there was betrayal or hurt or conflict, your brain might be working through those difficult emotions during sleep. This is especially true if you haven't fully processed the trauma or pain of that ending. Dreams can be a safe space for your mind to approach difficult feelings, to practice dealing with them, to gradually desensitize you to the emotional charge they carry. It's almost like your brain is running drills, helping you build resilience by repeatedly exposing you to the scenario in a context where you're ultimately safe because you're just sleeping in your bed. Sometimes these dreams increase in frequency when you're afraid of repeating past mistakes. If you have a new partner and you're worried about falling into old patterns, or if you're single and afraid you'll never find the right person, your brain might keep bringing up your ex as a way of saying, "Remember this, don't do this again, learn from this." It's not subtle, and it's definitely not comfortable, but it's a form of self-protection. Then there's the nostalgia factor, which is complicated because nostalgia itself is complicated. Human memory is notoriously unreliable, and we have a tendency to smooth over the rough edges of the past and remember things as better than they were. Even if you know logically that the relationship wasn't right, even if you can list all the reasons it ended, your brain might occasionally wander into nostalgic territory, especially if your current life has challenges or stresses. This doesn't mean you want your ex back. It means your brain is seeking comfort, and it's pulling up memories that feel comfortable or familiar, even if the reality of the relationship was far from comfortable. Interestingly, these dreams can also be about identity and who you were during that relationship. We all shift and change depending on who we're with and what role we're playing. The person you were with your ex was a version of you, and sometimes you dream about them when you're actually trying to access something about that version of yourself. Maybe that version of you was more carefree, or more ambitious, or more creative, and some current situation is calling for those qualities. Your ex appears in the dream as a marker for that time period and that version of yourself. It's also worth noting that the brain is incredibly associative, and sometimes the triggers for these dreams are almost absurdly mundane. You might hear a song that was playing during your relationship, eat at a restaurant you used to go to together, or even just encounter someone who reminds you of your ex in some small way. These tiny triggers during the day can set off a cascade of associations that bubble up in your dreams at night. You might not even consciously register the trigger during your waking hours, but your brain caught it and filed it away for nighttime processing. So what can you do about these recurring dreams if they're bothering you? Well, first, it helps to stop judging yourself for having them. These dreams don't mean you're weak or that you haven't moved on or that something is wrong with you. They're a normal part of how the human brain processes significant emotional experiences. Accepting them without adding a layer of anxiety or shame actually helps reduce their frequency over time. Journaling can be surprisingly effective. When you wake up from one of these dreams, take a few minutes to write down not just what happened in the dream, but how you felt during it and after waking up. Then, and this is the important part, try to identify what's actually going on in your current life that might be triggering these dreams. Are you stressed? Are you dealing with a situation that echoes something from that relationship? Are you working through some aspect of personal growth? Making these connections conscious can help your brain feel like the processing work is done, and it might not need to keep bringing it up in dreams. Therapy can also be incredibly helpful, particularly if the relationship ended traumatically or if you notice the dreams are connected to deeper patterns or wounds. A therapist can help you fully process the experience and integrate it into your life story in a way that feels complete. Some people find it useful to actively redirect their thoughts before sleep. This isn't about suppressing or denying anything, but rather about giving your brain other material to work with. Engaging with positive content, practicing gratitude, or even just thinking through what you're looking forward to tomorrow can help populate your mental space with fresh material for your dreams to incorporate. And here's something that might seem counterintuitive. Sometimes you need to consciously spend a little time thinking about the relationship and your ex during your waking hours. If you've been actively avoiding all thoughts of them, pushing down any feelings that come up, your brain might be using dreams as the only outlet it has for necessary processing. Giving yourself permission to think about it, feel about it, and work through it while you're awake might actually reduce the need for your brain to do that work while you're asleep. The bottom line is that these recurring dreams are almost always about you, not about your ex. They're about your growth, your fears, your unprocessed emotions, your current challenges, or your evolving sense of self. Your ex is just the familiar imagery your brain is using to work through all of this. They're a symbol, a reference point, a character in the story your mind is telling itself as it tries to make sense of your experiences and emotions. Over time, as you continue to live your life, build new experiences, and create new neural pathways associated with new people and new patterns, these dreams typically fade. The old pathways don't disappear entirely, because that's not how memory works, but they become less dominant, less frequently traveled. Your brain finds new shortcuts, new symbols, new reference points. Eventually, if you dream about your ex at all, it's occasional rather than recurring, and it doesn't carry the same emotional weight. So the next time you wake up from one of these dreams feeling frustrated or confused, try to be gentle with yourself. Your brain isn't betraying you or undermining your progress. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, processing, learning, protecting, and helping you grow. These dreams are actually evidence that your mind is working through something important, and that's ultimately a healthy thing, even when it doesn't feel that way in the moment. Trust the process, be patient with yourself, and know that this too shall pass.